All right, so it's really important that our energies are high here. At this gate especially. So if you got it in you, let it out of you. Thanks for being here.
And I'm from San Jose, and I'm here today because what's happening with the Palestinians is just deplorable, and I think it's high time that we make a statement. And one of the biggest ways to make a statement is by monetary effect, and so hopefully this will send a message to Israel that U.S. is not going to be doing business with them any longer. And hopefully we can send a message to our representatives that we want change to happen, and so hopefully our tax dollars will stay in the U.S. where they are more needed. And
the United States is giving a lot of money to Israel.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It drives me crazy. Drives me crazy. As a teacher, I think we could use the money in our education system more than we could in supporting wars overseas where, I mean, it's not really a war, right? It's like you're just killing people. So
it sounds like it's a business.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody's making money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Teachers are under attack in California here. I mean,
they are.
I mean, just survival.
They are. Yeah. It's just we're trying to make it work, and nobody's satisfied. So, just trying to do what we can.
And this whole pandemic, I mean, it's really hurt people in Palestine where they haven't gotten the vaccine. I mean, they've given it to Israelis, but not to.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's genocide. It's basically, call it what it is. You know, you're ethnically cleansing a peoples, and you're purposely targeting them. And I mean, these people are dying, and nobody's doing anything about it.
So there is something happening here.
What? Right, which is why we're here today, right? Is to shine light on this and hopefully make an impact.
More money for its war crimes.
Are young people waking up, do you think, in this country? About this?
So I think so. I mean, I'm Arab, so I've known about this since I was like really, really young. But I would like to think so, yes. I think ever since the Trump administration, young people have been waking up and trying to learn more. And I think young and old people alike are standing with Palestine. I think the citizens of the U.S. and the residents are definitely waking up. I know a lot of people who didn't even understand the if you want to call it Palestinian conflict, and are starting to understand it and be pro-Palestine. But I think the government itself knows what's happening. They just don't care, or they don't see it as like they're on Israel's side no matter what. So
they consider themselves Zionist? The government.
I think so, yes.
I mean, Nancy Pelosi and the politicians, Biden, they believe that they're Zionists. What does that mean to believe that you're a Zionist?
To be a Zionist is to believe in a Zionist state, which is to believe in the existence of Israel. They have a slogan, I believe it was, a land with no people for a people with no land. But Palestine was a land with people. There were loads of people living there already. So it's just to believe that Israel has a right to push out Palestinians and to exist in occupied land.
And Israel was an active supporter of South Africa, the apartheid regime there. You think it's because they had the same ideology that they did in South Africa?
100%. Like Israel being against the apartheid in South Africa would be so hypocritical. Then they would have to stop what they're doing, and they don't want to do that. The same as the U.S. If the U.S. calls out Israel, then they have to stop their treatment of the Native Americans. So it's the same.
Are young people waking up, do you think, in this country? About this?
So I think so. I mean, I'm Arab, so I've known about this since I was like really, really young. But I would like to think so, yes. I think ever since the Trump administration, young people have been waking up and trying to learn more. And I think young and old people alike are standing with Palestine. So.
My name is Stan Williams.
And you're here today in front of berth 30. There's supposed to be an Israeli chartered ship, the Volans, coming in. What brought you out here this early this morning?
To stand with the Palestinians in Gaza and to support ourselves and standing up against this company and using our tax dollars and our money to create more profits to bomb and to kill more Palestinians.
You think it's about money, it's about profits, that's what's going on here?
Part of it is, right? The other part is you know, millennium a fight for over millennium against Israelis and Palestinians. But yeah, a big part of this today is about money, and they shouldn't be able to do what they're doing over there and sell things to us and to create more profits to do it again over there. So
what do you think about the United States spending $4 billion a year? I mean, in fact, they're going to give another $725 million to Israel in military arms, and which is supported by Bernie Sanders. He didn't stop it, and Bernie Sanders says he's critical. Do you think there should be a cutoff of military economic aid to Israel by the United States?
I think that if a country is doing what they're doing to the Palestinians, we shouldn't be supporting that with our tax dollars. Anyway, we shouldn't be supporting apartheid.
And people in this country are hurting.
Yeah, all over the place. I mean, I work for a labor union, and I know what it is to fight for a dollar and an additional dollar. And if we're giving billions of dollars to a country who's bombing people, it's a travesty.
You think people are waking up in the United States?
What did Martin Luther King say? It's an arc. The arc of justice is long, right? But it bends. But I think day by day, the things and the actions like this, I think they're very important to highlight to the workers here, whoever, the media who's watching, and they're showing it to other people. I think it's very important that we do these actions.
Anthony LeVage.
So Anthony, you're a longshoreman. What's going on here today?
It's a picket of the ZIM ship. The longshoremen are standing by. They're not going to cross the line.
Yeah. You've seen this before. What's your feeling about ZIM?
Have I seen the picket before? In 2014, we had the same issue of blocking a ship from Israel or a ZIM ship because of the occupation and the escalated violence over there.
And what is this? Why is Israel doing that? Why is the United States supporting it?
I don't know. I can't even answer. I don't know. I mean, it would be almost similar to like them supporting a terrorist organization. I personally been to Gaza, not Gaza, but to Palestine. I think maybe three years ago, and I seen with my own eyes of the stealing of the land, the treatment of the Palestinian people.
How did you see that? What did you see?
I mean, all the checkpoints, how they live in different places, how you can have a Palestinian community and a Jewish person to move in, then they got to get escorted. It was sad, but it gives me a modern day look at how this land in the U.S. was stolen by the British and the Americans. It's just, you change the name of it. Back then it was like, it was savages. Now they're terrorists. You got to create these demonized people as you take land. So that would be my personal opinion, my experience of what I seen when I went over there. I think not just the union, like working class people should be involved. I mean, the same people who are doing this in Israel or automating the ports or whatever, or these wealthy group of people are doing things for profit. It affects all of us. So I think all working class people should be involved in wanting something different for the next generations.
And Israel was active in supporting apartheid South Africa. There's a struggle now in South Africa for survival. They're trying to privatize the ports in Durban and other ports. I mean, you think these struggles are similar all over the world?
Yes, yes. It's all part of just one system, where a group of people stay on top and the rest of us be on the bottom. That's what it's all boiled about. And then we're taught to fight under different flags. You know, we make fun or demonize the young men in the ghettos for having gangs and fighting over colors, but it's done on the highest level. It's the same thing. You know, instead of fighting over rims or whatever, these people are fighting over oil, control of satellite, and whatever else. It's the same difference. We just want to see the stop of killing of human beings for nothing. Period. For nothing. You know, it's plenty of resources on this planet for all of us to be able to share it, right? But if one group of people just want to have it all and leave the rest of us out of it, then that creates war and tension. And then the working people at the bottom, they just follow suit and follow under flags. You know, I'm American, North Korea's my enemy, you know, but these rich people, they are together as one. So we just got to come together as working class people.
Revolution! Revolution! There is only one solution. It's inside our revolution.
There is only one solution.
Jack Heyman, I'm a retired longshoreman, a veteran of the class struggles on the waterfront.
And what is this ship here that's coming in?
Well, this ship is called the Volans. It's chartered by ZIM lines, and she's bringing in cargo from China.
And I understand China is bringing a lot of cargo to Israel, and China is supporting Israel.
Well, these ships are doing here now. There's a 10-year contract with Amazon to bring in goods that are made in China to the U.S. for Amazon for 10 years.
That's a big contract.
It is, and they're chartering ships. This is a ZIM chartered ship, the Volans, that's in here now. And the picketers are stopping longshoremen from working it. But we don't want to just stop the ZIM ships in the Port of Oakland. This needs to spread up and down the West Coast, from Los Angeles and Long Beach, the two largest ports in this country, up to Seattle and Tacoma as well. And if we can do that successfully, then we need to appeal to dock workers around the world. In Italy, they're already taking action against ZIM ships. The Zionists have to know that when they commit these genocidal attacks against the Palestinian people, and so many children being killed, that there's a penalty to be paid. And we're going to stop these ships as much as we can around the world. This should be a message to dock workers around the world to join us, to send a message to the Zionist government of Israel that we will not be quiet. We will not be silenced when they attack the Palestinian people like this.
And what's the position of the ILWU and the ILA, two major unions representing dock workers on the West Coast and East Coast?
Well, the position of the ILA on the East Coast, they represent longshoremen on the Atlantic coast and also in the Caribbean and the Gulf. And so they've always supported Israel. They've always supported every U.S. imperialist war. We need to appeal to them to stand with us. This is no different than striking against the apartheid government of South Africa. We did several strikes against the apartheid government.
And 1984 was there?
In 1984 and after that as well. And also longshoremen on the East Coast did have strike actions against the apartheid government. We need to appeal to the longshoremen on the East Coast to join with us to send a message to the Israeli government that we will stop your ships if you continue to oppress the Palestinian people.
And Israel, wasn't that what it's based on, the oppression of the Palestinians? I mean, the Histadrut discriminates against Arab workers or Palestinians?
Well, the Histadrut, first of all, is not a trade union. It's a state organization. The Histadrut discriminates against Palestinians. They've shown no sympathy towards the struggle of Palestinian workers. They're only interested in Hebrew-speaking workers. And the importance here is that it shouldn't just be a nationalist struggle of the Hebrew-speaking workers against Palestinians. We need to unite the working class in the Middle East, especially in Palestine and Israel, a struggle against their respective governments to establish actually a workers' government in the Middle East. In Palestine and Israel should be one country, a democratic workers' republic.
So you don't agree with this two-state solution?
No, it's not working because since the Nakba in 1948, Israelis have been increasingly encroaching on Arab lands, stealing the lands, and it's led to continuous wars since 1948.
And the Democrats and Republicans seem to think that Israel should be supported. There's an $875 million that, including Bernie Sanders, are supporting. Why is the Democrats and Republicans supporting Israel?
Well, both parties have a same foreign policy. There's really not a difference in the Democrats and Republicans when you come to foreign policies. Whether it's the Vietnam War, wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, or Israel and Palestine, the Democrats and Republicans have the same party. That's why I've always fought for, in the Longshore Union, that we break with the Democrats and form a workers' party in this country that's going to oppose imperialism abroad and win the war at home against the employers.
And is there any hope of that?
I didn't hear.
Is there any hope of that?
Well, people are going to be disenchanted with the Biden administration, in my opinion. The Democrats really have offered nothing for the working class. We had a big strike in the Northwest just a few years ago. What did the Obama-Biden administration do? They sent in armed Coast Guard cutters to protect the scab ship. I mean, the Democrats call for support for them. At the same time, they're breaking strikes against trade unions. So we need to form our own party in this country, a workers' party that's going to fight for workers' interests.
Mike, I'm here to support the Palestinian cause. I was here in 2014. We have to keep throwing waves and waves of resistance against the apartheid state of Israel, and if we keep doing it, eventually we'll break it, and there will be and Palestine will be free.
And what happened in 2014?
There was a Israeli ship that was going to unload here in Port of Oakland, and people gathered, and the ILWU did not unload the ship. So the more people we can get out here, the better off we're going to be.
Why is the United States continuing to support Israel? It says they just agreed to send $875 million of more military weapons to Israel. Do you think they need more weapons in Israel?
They have way too many weapons. Most people don't know that Israel has nuclear weapons. They're in violation of the International Treaty on Nuclear Weapons, and it's an open secret. They are. Some people think of Israel as being a U.S. aircraft carrier in the Middle East. So they're there to help protect oil interests and to help U.S. continue to dominate the world. So.
Israel was quite active in supporting the attack on Iraq. You think that they have an influence in the United States about what happens in the Middle East?
I think the Israeli lobby is probably as powerful or more powerful than the National Rifle Association. It's crazy how much power they have. I mean, Congress just voted to send another $1 billion in aid. I don't know if they approved it, but they want to send another $1 billion in aid to Israel.
They need more money?
I think they need more money to keep the state propped up, because it's an artificial state. Without U.S. support and support of other imperialist lackeys, around the world, Israel would collapse, I think.
And the Democrats seem to be united with the Republicans that they want to support an Israeli Israeli state, a Jewish state?
Traditionally, it's, yeah, well, you know, I think we live in, basically, there are two wings of one party, the Democrats and Republicans. They both support the interests of the 1%, the ruling class, and there's not a significant difference. In foreign policy, they're really close. As a matter of fact, the Democrats, I think, are more scary as far as foreign policy is concerned, especially Biden. And the way he's stirring up the anti-China sentiment, and the way they're putting more money into nuclear weapons, and that started with Obama. So the Democrats, to me, are scarier than the Republicans in foreign policy. I mean, Trump was nuts, but everybody acknowledged that, and so I think everybody was watching him. Biden is just consistent. You know, he's consistently imperialist.
And Barbara Lee, she's a congresswoman from Alameda. Has she spoken up for any kind of blockade of Israel?
I don't know if she has or not endorsed the blockade, but you know, she's the only one who voted against the authorization to send troops into the Middle East. So I mean, she definitely has some good ideas, but I don't know what her policy is on Israel. I know it hasn't been really good in the past because I've called up her office several times in past years to complain about her stand on Palestine.
What was her response?
You know, the staffers seem to be sympathetic. It's a very small group of people, I think, in power are the ones who are really propping up Israel.
Deej from Quit.
Okay. So Deej, you're up here early in the morning in front of this.
I'm retired.
Yeah. Why don't you talk about why you're here and the issues you're concerned about?
Well, I'm concerned about Palestine and the bombing of Gaza and the displacement of everybody and the Palestinians' national rights.
I'm Yoshi. I'm a local 10. I've been a longshoreman for 11 years.
And we're here today, and you know, the people are protesting in solidarity with the Palestinians. What do you think about that?
Well, we don't cross picket lines. I can't speak for my union, but I don't support any type of war. If they're here, we can't cross it. That's all I can say. And so I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Everyone else is doing what they're supposed to do. And
you don't believe in crossing picket lines?
We do not. We do not cross them. We are union. We're a union, and we do not cross picket lines. So this is the way it is. I can't speak on anything else. But yeah, my belief, I don't believe in funding a war. I don't believe in helping anyone hurt other people. I don't believe in any of that, you know, but that's my personal opinion. I can't speak for my union.
My name is Tatiana Brown. I live in Berkeley, and I came here because I'm a Jewish person with Holocaust survivors in my family. The German government actually paid my family reparations. Novel idea, I know. Until my great-grandmother died at 98 because we lost so many people in the Holocaust. And I think that using the threat of genocide against Jewish people is a nightmarish and deplorable use of whiteness to excuse violence against children and families and people who deserve to live in their homelands. And it is, I find it, I'm sorry, I'm pretty emotional about this, but I find it just horrifying that the suffering of my family is being used to justify the suffering of millions of people and to create an apartheid state in the Middle East. I don't think it is acceptable for us to deputize ourselves as white folks in an area that has people who've lived there for centuries. It is a much more complicated issue than than just having, you know, the UN and British imperialists draw a bunch of lines on a map in like 1948, and it's stupid that we're justifying just the cruelty against people who are just trying to live, and I cannot live with that being done in my name or in the name of my family.
It seems like Israel the Zionists say that you're defending Jews by supporting Israel? You don't agree with that?
No, I don't think that being, sorry, 8 different thoughts at once. One, I don't think there is any way to justify state violence by calling it defending a people, especially when when a lot of those people are not okay with those actions and would not be comfortably represented in that so-called homeland. Like, there are so many Jewish folks who can't call Israel home because of repressive tactics and laws inside of that government. So it doesn't speak for Jewish people, and equating Jewish people with Israel is inherently anti-Semitic, actually. So, yeah, I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Well, that is what they're saying. They're saying if you criticize Israel, you're anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
You don't buy that argument.
No, I think that if you try and tell me that Judaism is synonymous with Israel, that's anti-Semitic. And I find it deeply problematic. Yeah, if you want to equate Zionism with Judaism, you've missed out on Tikkun Olam, you've missed out on all manner of deeply held Jewish values that the Israeli government is trampling on in the name of Zionism. I cannot imagine sitting and listening to a sermon from a rabbi who would preach that it's okay to bomb children or innocent people or people. Like, I can't imagine a Jewish line of thinking that would justify just the morally repugnant violence that is being meted out to civilians every day, all because we want more Jewish people to live in a neighborhood. Like, it's wrong on every possible level, and I wouldn't be Jewish if being Zionist was the same as being Jewish.
It seems like there are more and more young Jews who are becoming very angry about them, this Israel saying you're representing Jews, and if you criticize Israel, you're against Jews.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's incredibly frustrating to have to have your own voice co-opted in the name of violence that you would never have been okay with. I don't want to live in a world where it's okay to make apartheid states. Like, that feels like a fairly simple line of argument and analysis to me, and then it goes missing when you're like, oh, like Jewish people, like, I don't know. I've read a lot of things like thinking about like how people create a sense of justification around victimhood for Jewish people. And I've lived with anti-Semitism. I've lived in a world where I've been afraid to be who I am because I'm Jewish. And I think that it is not okay to use that as a justification for being an oppressor. And every time I see people do that conflating, it feels like they're trying to tell me that it is my job to take up arms against the people who have had my back in the moments where anti-Semitism has been worst. Like, I work in anti-racist coalitions often, and during the start of the Trump administration, when I was most scared about the rise of anti-Semitism that was happening, there was this really simple moment I remember watching a bunch of people say Heil Trump in a video, and I was talking to a collaborator of mine who is black, and I was like, yeah, that scared me more than I thought it would. And they said to me, I have your back anytime. I will protect you with everything I have. And I cannot responsibly justify being violent towards anyone who would have my back and the backs of people I love in that way. Independent of it, like, first it's just wrong, right? Like, it's just wrong. But then on top of it, like, we could be in solidarity with one another, and instead we're allowing ourselves, or we, right, not me, but people who are also saying that they're doing it for Jewish people are allowing ourselves to move as though we get benefits from supporting white supremacy, settler colonialism, and imperialism, and we just don't. So yeah, it's frustrating.
I think a lot of Jews are waking up in this country in opposing. You think Jews are waking up in this country, especially young Jews, that they're not going to put up with this policy vision?
I think our waking up, it's a complicated thing to say, right? Because I think I come from a long tradition of like radical progressive Jews. So acknowledging that that has existed for a long time, like certainly before the civil rights movement and for decades and centuries before that, like tikkun olam means the repair of the world, and that's something Jewish people have believed in for forever. But with that in mind, yes, I think that more Jewish people are hearing the voices inside of our own communities and the work of indigenous, black and indigenous organizers and people of color, like the Black Lives Matter movement, like the organizers at Standing Rock, and they're recognizing, especially having just lived through so much of this pandemic that's still ongoing, and that there's so much disparity in who has access to actual care to end their experience of the pandemic. But we've just lived through an immense amount of suffering together, and I think that that's created an outpouring of compassion and a recognition that maybe we shouldn't be such assholes to each other. And so I do think that that motivates people to reconsider political positions that cause us to dehumanize one another and deprioritize the needs and well-being of other people.
My name is Priya. I live in Oakland. I'm here today to block the ZIM ship because I think that the flow of capital is inherently linked to imperialism, and when we stand together and stop that from happening, from normalizing kind of the globalization of Israeli products, especially weaponry, then we can win and liberate ourselves and all oppressed people. Yeah.
It seems like it's a big business in the United States, selling weapons to Israel, selling weapons all over the world. You think that should stop?
Oh, 100%. It's extremely normalized. Our tax dollar funds that. So tacitly we're giving our consent to the slaughter and the mass murder that the U.S. helps enable, and what Israel is doing in Gaza and all around Palestine. So yeah, liberate Palestine and the land.
Yeah, I'm originally from Iran, and since I was very young, I was very much concerned about what was going on in Palestine, and I was active since I was in college. So it's been a very long time, and the reason I'm here, I just want to show my solidarity to the people of Palestine who've been suffering for decades and decades, and I'm heartened by the attention that Palestinians are getting these days, but that also worries me a little bit, because I don't know if we are all going to stay in this in the long haul. I'm very afraid that people may disperse after they forget about the Gaza and the massacre of the people. So I support BDS, and I think that's the only way that things can change, and we can end the apartheid and the Zionist ideology actually governing that area.
What is that ideology?
What I mean is the Zionist ideology. I mean that this mythology, I should say, maybe more than ideology, which is this destiny of the Jewish people to return to their land, which does not actually correspond with what we know historically to be true, and also we don't people who live there, as far as we can tell, have been Palestinians and living with Jews, with native Jews, and I have nothing against that kind of setup, Jews and Palestinians living together the way they used to. But what is really unjust is this colonial, settler colonialism, and the fanaticism that I can see that is borderlines with fascism, actually. These words may not be, very accurate the way I'm using them, but that's how it feels like it. And I want to see one country where everyone can live in peace, security, and equality.
But do you really think that that's going to happen when the United States has got a military armada in the Middle East? The United States was involved in overthrowing government, the Mossadegh government in Iran. I mean, it seems like the United States has intervened to put in, they're propping up the Saudi Arabia theocratic regimes.
I'm not very optimistic, but I think that we have to keep the hope alive, and also hope for the American people in general to develop some more compassion about the people who live outside the borders of the United States. That's the only way that I see there would be a chance. Otherwise, U.S. imperialism is not gonna go away by itself, or ruling classes are not one day decide that, what we've been doing is wrong. We should just remove all our military installation all over the world.
And the sanctions that the United States has imposed on countries Iran,
like Venezuela, Cuba, all of these. So if I want to look at the government, of course I would say that there is no hope, but my only hope is that with these kind of mobilizations, and also with the new generation that I think is more progressive than any other generation that I can think of, even more than the generation of Vietnam War, because there was some selfish interest involved too. People didn't want to go to war. A lot of people were motivated by that, but this generation has a more understanding of what is just and what is injustice, what is equality, and what is right, what is wrong, more than any other generation, at least since the 60s. So my hope is with the new generation, with the young people.
Larry Wright, retired longshoreman, Local 10 and Local 91.
And Larry, you've been involved for many years, including the fight against the apartheid regime. Why don't you talk about some of that history and its connection today?
Well, I see the struggle today in Palestine is very similar. I was involved in the civil rights movement in this country. I went to Mississippi in 1964, and I've seen the racism in South Africa is very similar to the racism and Jim Crow that existed in this country. So I got involved, worked with an organization called Liberation Support Movement, and we supported liberation struggles in Mozambique, Angola, South Africa, Zimbabwe. I went to Africa for 3 months in support of the popular movement for the liberation of Angola, and so I had a lot of experience in working with African people in revolution. And so we formed a committee in Local 10 called the Southern African Liberation Support Committee, and started doing support for the people, the workers, especially in South Africa. We raised material support, but most importantly, we politicized people. We educated people about what was happening there, so that when a vote came up in Local 10 to not discharge a ship that had South African cargo, it passed, I think, unanimously, and we were able to stop a ship for 11 days, and it galvanized a big coalition of groups, including the church groups, the labor community, the gay community, just all kinds of people who were understanding students of what was happening there, and it was very effective. There was thousands of people that went on and played a role in apartheid eventually being abolished in South Africa in 1994. So now I see this struggle is very similar in South Africa. They pushed people off the land. Blacks were forced into some of the worst land where they couldn't really even farm and support themselves, so that people were forced to go into what was called South Africa and work.
The Bantustans.
What's happening in Palestine is very similar. People are having their land stolen, their houses stolen. There's a lot of violence against Palestinians. It's been particularly bad here just recently, and I see it as a form of apartheid and a form of genocide, the way the Palestinians are being killed in this struggle. And I don't think that the Israeli government has any thoughts of a peace settlement. I think that they're just slowly pushing the Palestinians away, and it's just that kind of terrible situation that existed in South Africa, and it's happening in Palestine now.
And the longshoremen on San Francisco Local 10 have played a pretty historic role of internationalism. You think that's going to continue, and also should it spread? I mean, around the world, South Africa, all Europe. I mean, it seems like it would have an economic effect on Israel if similar actions took place internationally.
Yeah, I've been retired for 12 years, so I haven't been, active in Local 10. And a lot of the young people don't have the same history as the old-timers that went through the strikes in 34 and 48 and 71 and we had committees in the union that did political education. So I don't know how much of that exists now. Unfortunately, I don't think the membership of Local 10 is as politicized as it once was, understanding these struggles. But the union still supports other unions, the internationalism of the positions it takes.
Hi.
Hi.
So you have some signs here, Palestinian loss of land, 1947 to present. What is this all about?
Well,
what's your name?
Well,
what your name? Your name?
Andrew Gutierrez, Professor Emeritus, UC Berkeley. Loss of land basically is displacement of indigenous people by basically foreigners, and the Holocaust is a horrible thing. And the movement of the Jews, survivors to Palestine, okay. But it should have been in a cooperative manner. It hasn't. It has been an apartheid regime from the very beginning. And the goal has been displacement. And the current Prime Minister-to-be, Bennett, doesn't have any problem with killing Arabs, and he doesn't have any problem with displacing them. He doesn't believe that a second two-state solution is even possible, and probably everything that's on the ground indicates exactly the same thing, that it's not possible.
The formation of Israel, it was supposed to be a solution for anti-Semitism, that it would protect the Jews. What is the reality today after many, many decades of the formation of Israel?
Well, it seems that the oppressed has become the oppressor. Simply as that. So, when they say that Israel has a right to protect itself, Gaza is the largest indoor prison in the world, 2 million people roughly. And they're basically using enhanced rockets that the Israelis were using in the 47 war. There's a monument in Safat in Israel to that rocket. So it's not a war, it more or less is a massacre. The guards are shooting into the prison, basically. That's what it's about.
It seems like the United States is a big supporter. They're going to send another $875 million to military weapons. Does Israel need more?
Yeah, well, they give $3.7 billion per year, but they actually give more when you think in terms of all of the extras that they get. When we look at what our Congress is about, we basically have a bunch of people who depend upon monies to get reelected. The more money they can get, the more likely they're going to be reelected. And the amount of money that comes from the Zionist lobby is enormous. It's enormous. So in a sense, they're captive to this system of selling their vote for money. So a lot of them probably have a good conscience about what's going on in Palestine, but being reelected seems to be more important.
The lobby, the Israeli lobby, what kind of control do they have of the U.S. Congress? What kind of control does the Israeli lobby have of the U.S. Congress?
The book by Mearsheimer and Walt pretty well spelled that out. They basically control just about everything. Nothing happens in this country that they don't get involved. It doesn't matter whether it's at the national level or at the local level. Anything that is critical of Israel's policy is immediately attacked. So, for example, the amount of money that Trump got from the Adelson, the Las Vegas mogul, is obscene. The amount of money that Clinton got from Saban is obscene. I mean, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. So that gives you an idea of what the lobby's about. And those people are single-issue lobbyists. I mean, they got billions of dollars, and their issue is Israel, right or wrong. And so Israel has a right to live in peace and be protected and have security. But so do the Palestinians. I mean, I've worked in Israel, Palestine since 1978, and I have seen the decline of any semblance of democracy. It is an apartheid state.
And how have you seen that? What examples? What examples of that? What examples of that have a decline of democracy in Israel?
Well, it's an oxymoron to be a Jewish democracy, because a lot of 25% of the population is not Jewish. So how can you be a democratic Jewish state? Why don't we call this a Christian democratic state?
There's some people who would like to do that in the United States, and they're in alliance with Israel too.
But it's an oxymoron. That doesn't work. You can either be a democracy or you can be a Jewish state. I mean, Iran makes no bones about what they're about. And Israel appears not to be making any bones about what they're about.
La Bossière, Yeah, very opposed to what's going on in Gaza, very opposed to the occupation of Palestine. It's outrageous, the killings, the bombings of the people, and Palestine must be free. People have a right to self-determination and a right to respect their right to live, and they must respect their right to live as human beings and respect their rights. So that's why I'm here.
And the United States is giving a lot of money, billions of dollars to Israel. You think the United States government, the politicians, are concerned about the Palestinians?
This is just plain wrong, outrageous. We are having the same thing in Haiti. I'm from Haiti, and what's going on there is outrageous because they are financing the killing and the murders of innocent people, and this is not right. And this is all in the spirit of making money, of providing more than enough for a small minority that has more than enough of their share. This is all about greed and exploitation. It must stop. Too many people are being murdered, they are being killed.
The ideology of Zionism, what do you think about that ideology?
From what I see about Zionism, from what I've read, it's wrong to take over people's lands, to chase people out, and to practice apartheid. And everyone from throughout the world has denounced what the Zionist state is doing as apartheid. And it looks very much like the same apartheid that took place in South Africa. Palestinians are human beings, and they are entitled to living a decent life and not to be subjected to oppression, to repression, to segregation, and everything that they are doing to them, to murders. That's what's going on.
And the Haitians were the first to fight for democracy against slavery, and they have a long history. It seems that that battle is continuing in Haiti.
Yes, it is continuing, and that's why we Haitians traditionally have been in solidarity with oppressed people throughout the world, and Haiti had declared itself way back in 1804 a sanctuary nation, inviting oppressed people from all over the world to come to Haiti. So Haiti is a sanctuary country, and it's in that spirit that we continue to be in solidarity with people who are struggling for their human rights and for their dignity and against oppression.
And the people here, there are a large number of people here early in the morning. You think people in the United States are waking up, are making these connections? I mean, one is this whole issue of settler countries. The United States was a settler country, kicking the Native Americans out. I mean, it's
precisely, and that's what we are seeing. This repeat. We saw that in Africa. We are seeing it in Palestine. We saw it in the U.S., and this is not right. And people are waking up to that fact. Well, when you have a minority that is very rich and controls the media, then they push out these narratives that tell a very different story and that gloss over the repression and the killing and the atrocities they are committing, all to get money to be super rich. And more people are waking up to that fact.
That are still on the House floor that Congress is ignoring, that has to do with black and brown issues. Okay, you have the George Floyd Act. How many black people have to get shot in the back of the head, chased down by vigilante citizens, okay, and killed before the George Floyd Act is passed? You got the reparations bill. It's not even to give black people reparations, it's to explore it. We can't even get that passed, okay? You have the anti-lynching bill. How can you not pass an anti-lynching bill? How can you not be against lynching, okay? That is a huge problem. So when you come down as a representative of corporate America or whatever you want to call them, and you talking to black and brown people and you telling them you want them to cross other black and brown people who are having very similar things happen to them, and in particular when it's not even that's not our job. We're not the police of the port. We are the workers of the port. Okay, you can't put that kind of pressure on labor. Okay, the people who are exercising their rights out here today, those are working people also. Okay, we have 10 guiding principles that we follow. We intend to follow them. Okay, so the employers and corporate America can try to shape any kind of scenario or story that they want. Okay, this is what it is. Okay, you have people out here exercising their rights, and it is not the ILWU's job, or it is not in our best interest for safety reasons and every other reason to challenge these protesters. I will say this, the employers have not contacted us, meaning the Pacific Maritime Association, has not contacted us to try to challenge us in this situation as of yet. Okay, but I have gotten some reports that ZIM Lines has not only threatened but said that they were going to pull out of here, you know, because we won't cross through this picket line. And that to me is racist. Okay, it is, you know, to try to pressure workers to challenge protesters is just insane, asinine. And to hurl a threat because we won't do it is just, to me, racist. You know, I'm just going to say it, tell it like it is. It's racist, and we have no room for that. You know, every time we see these examples of racism and bigotry, they have to be challenged, and people have to start telling the truth about what's going on. Okay.
How did you hear about the ZIM threats? Was that by email or a letter? Or?
Well, we've been seeing it on the internet for a month now. The ship is finally here. There's been it's been on the internet for a month that the ship was coming on certain days and it didn't show up, or on this day or that day. You know, and we've just been sitting back and waiting for it to get here, you know, and then once it got here, we dispatched our jobs and we came out here to go to work.
What did you tell your workers to do this morning?
I told them to stand by until we get further information, you know, and we haven't gotten any information. I haven't spoken to representatives from TRAPAC. I haven't spoken to the employers about anything. So until I do that, you know, I don't have really much information. I don't know the employer's position. You know, I know our position is that we're not going to fight protesters. That's not going to, our members are not going to fight any protesters. So much lying and deceit and racism and all of this stuff going on in the world that, you know, literally the people who are causing all of this to happen are putting the burden on the victims of it to solve it. And it's never going to get solved that way.
I'm sorry, I forgot to ask earlier, but are your folks going to get paid today?
We don't know. That's up in the air also, and that's where you saw me collecting the tickets. And we were going to have a discussion with the employers about it, but of course they'll resist that. You know, I guess if we became their police force and fought our way through the gate through the protesters, then we deserve pay. You know, I just, you know, it makes me angry. To that our members get put in this position. You know, all of our members aren't political. You know, you got people, all different races, all different backgrounds, that members of our local. Some of them don't care about politics. Some of them don't even want to talk about politics. But those members were affected today. Okay, and you have corporate bosses that don't understand that dynamic. You know.
Can I just ask you to say your name and your title?
Trent Willis. I'm the president of the ILWU Local 10.
Durban, South Africa, there was an action there protesting it. The longshoremen in South Africa have faced apartheid. What's the connection? They're trying to privatize the port in Durban. Is there a connection between what's happening here and in South Africa?
There's a connection with that everywhere. The tactic of racism and using that kind of pressure on workers is everywhere. Okay, the labor movement is always affected by the tactics of the bosses. Okay, so you know, instead of solving some of the problems that we have globally around the world with the corporate bosses pretty much pitting workers against each other, race against each other, and all of these tactics of division that are used so that we never get to the root of problems.
What is the root?
Racism and greed. That's what the root of the problems are. Okay, you got people here who want to hog up everything, all of the resources on earth, You know, people like me and my brothers and sisters, we have to fight. We have to fight for decent wages, working conditions on a daily basis. You know, and efforts to stop that from happening, they happen all the time. In order to stop working people from uniting all around the world, you have to use divisive tactics, racism. You know, you have to have people getting paid more than others, jealousy. You know, you gotta have all of these dividing tactics to keep people from uniting and realizing that when we all stand together as a unit around the world, then that's when change will happen. And it has to be the working people that do it. You know, because working people have power. And there are forces that don't want us to know we have that power. You know, and all of these things like this today, all of this happens because of people ignoring the plight of working people, whether it be the Palestinians, whether it be the African Americans here in the United States, you know, whether it be the South Africans during apartheid. You know, if you look at the one common denominator here is that we're all working people, and working people should back each other up, okay, and they should support each other, okay. The corporate America doesn't want that to happen, okay. So even in a situation like this, where, you know, there's no clear, there's nothing happening here that the employers or corporate America or the ZIM lines or anybody can blame on the longshore workers. However, they're doing it anyway, okay? Because what they're telling us is that, oh, well, we don't want you to just stand there. We want you to challenge these protesters. That's what they want our members to do, which I think is asinine and racist. How are you going to ask workers to challenge other workers? You know, what do they want us to have a brawl out here with protesters? That's ridiculous. You know, so they threaten and try to punish us for something we have no control over. Even if we wanted to have control over it, we could not. We don't have any control over this. Yeah. I don't even understand why a threat is even hurled towards the ILWU.
I guess how is the threat? That's what I'm wondering. Was there like an email
yeah, I got some text messages and some calls from people this morning that are relaying messages from ZIM lines saying that what they're going to do and all of this. Why are you telling the ILWU what you're going to do?
Now, ZIM has signed a 10-year contract with Amazon,
right?
And Amazon itself is union busting here and around the world.
Right.
What do you think that means, the relationship of ZIM with Amazon? They know who Amazon is, and Amazon knows who they are?
Well, Amazon is a company that ships out products, and ZIM is
from China. Right. And this is going to go from China all over the world.
And we are fully aware of you know, the situation in Alabama regarding Amazon. We look at the internet. We read newspapers, and just like everybody else in the world. So we're fully aware of some of the issues surrounding Amazon and ZIM lines. Doesn't have anything to do with this today. You know, today there's some protesters in front of the fence, okay? And for me to get a message that, okay, we're gonna pull out of here, is just, why are you sending me the message? You understand? It's like, so what you're telling me is that because we won't challenge those protesters down there, okay, which is unsafe for us to do. You don't challenge protesters, okay, because that can end up bad. Okay, yeah. So they're basically telling us if we don't challenge those protesters, we're pulling out of here. That's what they're telling us. You know, and we take offense to that. That's very offensive. You know, it's like telling the victims of racial hate that if they don't challenge the haters, yeah, you know, like, don't call the police or, you know, do things the right way. You know, you got to challenge them yourself. And it's not like we're in there refusing to to work the cargo or something, you know, but we're getting treated like we are, which to me is very offensive, because it's telling me that somebody thinks that we're supposed to go and challenge those protesters, which is not what labor does. You know, that we're a labor organization. We're not a security force.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not soldiers. You know, we're not armed troops. We're not any of that. You know, so we don't do the dirty work for the police and stuff like that.
Well, the longshoremen were killed in '34.
Yeah, longshore workers were killed in 1934, and we have never forgotten that. We celebrate it every year on Bloody Thursday, and there have been people killed since then. Okay, you know, the struggle for working people is ongoing. Okay, there needs to be some recognition of that the struggle is ongoing, it continues, and the fact that the struggle is continuing is sad. Okay, there needs to be a reckoning, not only in the United States, but around the world. Okay, we need to tackle issues like racism and the wealth gap, because those are the problems that are fueling these protests. Okay, racism in the Middle East. Okay, why are we even calling it the Middle East? What is the Middle East? Tell me what the Middle East are. Are we talking about Northern Africa here? Or are we talking about the Middle East? How did that even get renamed the Middle East? See, that's all BS. Okay, when society starts talking about issues the way they are and start telling the truth about things the way they are, you know, like you have 1% of the population of this world that is hogging up all of the wealth, while you got people sleeping under bridges, you got people sleeping in cars and on the street. This is why people are protesting. You know, you had the Occupy movement come down here, okay? And the Occupy movement organizers, they marched through the streets of downtown, they marched through the port, okay? What is the reason why they were marching? Okay, you have corporate America, they go, oh, these people are stopping our cargo, they're stopping our money. Yeah, but what is the reason?
Yeah. And the privatization of the port here in Oakland by John Fisher.
You got the Fisher family and all of these things that happen negative to the public and workers that people respond to. It's too much focus put on the response. What about the reason the people are protesting? People are not protesting all over the world because things are peachy keen and fine. Okay? People are not marching up and down the street, hooping and hollering. People, and even people storming the Capitol. They're not doing that because everything's fine. Okay? They're doing that because there's some kind of problem, whether it's a problem with the people or with what's happening to the people. Okay? Now, when you see stuff like a gang, a mob is able to basically storm the Capitol building and nothing happens, okay? And then you got protesters out here that are protesting, and you have cops everywhere. You want the longshoremen to jump on them and all of that. Yeah, I mean that doesn't add up. It's completely asinine. Okay, it's a way to you know, downplay the scenario or downplay what's actually happening. That way you never get to the point where you're addressing the real issues. Okay, because you take certain situations and you lie about them. The people, the insurrection in Washington D.C., those people were tourists, right? That's what one Congress or senator said. They look like tourists. Why can't these protesters look like tourists? Okay, are these tourists? No. Do you know what they call them? They call them rebel rousers and you know, they call them all of the bad names, you know, because they're standing up for the Palestinian people. And then they call the longshoremen. They say we're helping them and we're horrible too, and we should have the Taft-Hartley Act invoked on us. Okay, what should happen to those people that stormed the Capitol, busting windows and threatening to kill, trying to kill congressmen and senators? What do they call them? You know, so you're gonna these are all things that working people and people in the public are concerned about and are thinking about when you come out here and you have a company like ZIM Lines tell us we're going to pull out of here because people are protesting something that's going on in the world. You know, that's to me, that is asinine to do that.
Democrats and Republicans are in charge. I mean, they're continuing to support Israel, $1 billion more in military aid, and they say they can't pass anything in Congress.
Well, they seem to be passing things like the Asian hate bill. They passed that like that.
Yeah.
Okay. A Jewish guy got attacked in New York. They passed that bill like that. Okay, the only thing they seem to not be able to pass is issues that have to do with African Americans. That's what it looks like to me, you know, and not saying that those bills that I just mentioned shouldn't have been passed, but don't ignore African Americans, okay? Because you're sending us a message, okay? It's already in the Constitution that me, the president of the ILWU Local 10, as far as this government is concerned, I'm 3/5 of a man. Okay, I don't have voting rights. My voting rights are under attack. Okay, I don't deserve reparations from Jim Crow and the prison industrial complex and slavery. Okay, we don't deserve reparations for all of the inventions and things that were stolen from us and all of the history, all of the wealth stolen from black people. We don't even have the opportunity to talk about something like the Tulsa massacre that happened 100 years ago that was covered up. Black Wall Street, any time in history in this country when black people have developed their own economic base, it's been burned to the ground. Tulsa, Oklahoma was not the only Black Wall Street. Okay, there were several Black Wall Streets that were all burnt to the ground by white mobs. Okay, that is not talked about. Okay, that's just swept under the rug. How long does especially in this new age of the internet and all of the information sources that people have, how long do you think people are going to stay quiet about that? Okay, this new generation is not staying quiet about that. They are educating themselves, and they are voicing their opinions. They're letting themselves be heard, and I agree with them. You know, I've lived 54 years. And I've seen black people ignored since I can remember opening my eyes, which probably 50 years ago. So for 50 years, I've been watching black people get ignored. I've been watching working people get ignored. I've been watching tyranny, okay, and I've been watching slavery, indentured slavery, and that's what low wages are. That's indentured servitude. Okay, that shouldn't happen in the richest country in the world. Okay, so you know you got people spouting off about the land of the free and all these opportunities here. Well, you know, history shows us that every opportunity for African Americans was burned to the ground. So, you know, it's hypocritical. It's time that you know, we as a people are not the only ones telling the truth. Because this demonstration out here, this is about the truth. This is about people trying to protest so that the truth comes out, right? People shouldn't have to protest for the truth to come out. The truth should be told from the get-go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just ask your deputy partners of what's going on.
Okay, so there's
missed the beginning
okay, we missed it. So there's a picket out here today, and the ILWU members are standing by, and you're not going to cross that picket line.
I wouldn't recommend our members to cross a picket line. First of all, it goes against our 10 guiding principles. You know. Second of all, we're not the troops for the corporate bosses, so we're not going to fight through protesters for them. We have the right to work in a safe environment. It's in our contract, and it's the employer's responsibility to make sure that that environment is safe. You know, so for there to be any insinuation or any thought in anybody's mind to try to get us to fight through a picket line is crazy. Because we are labor. We're not You know, we're not the employer's defense force.